This is Tabletop Weekly, and we're the partners of Solarian Games. I'm Jason.
I'm Peter.
And this week's stories. Jeremy Crawford is the latest to leave Wizards of the Coast and Dungeons and Dragons. Stolen Magic, the Gathering artist proof. Charles Urbach has had a piece stolen. Pivotal magazines in RPG history. Shannon Appelkline has written a great think piece on some of the most important magazines in gaming and RPG history. And Mongoose acquires the Dark Conspiracy RPG.
Very cool.
All right, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, so we have another person to leave the House of the Dragon, Jeremy Crawford. We had I'm sorry, what was the guy's name last week we talked about, or 2 weeks
Chris
ago?
Perkins.
Chris Perkins left. Now Jeremy's leaving. Apparently, they were both really big influences, big players in that in D&D. He served as the game director and co-lead designer of the 5th edition, and he is leaving Wizards of the Coast. This is not good news, right? I mean, this seems kind of odd.
Like a lot of people are. I mean, it might be confirmation bias that we're just hearing about all of it, but Mike Merle's left a while back, and then Chris Perkins, and now Jeremy Crawford, and it does signal if nothing else, it signals a big changing of the guard.
Yeah. Crawford was, it says in our notes we have here, says Crawford was the game director for Dungeons and Dragons as one of the guiding forces for D&D over the past decade. In the past year, Crawford has focused on the core rulebooks and leading the team of rules designers. He's also been a face for Dungeons and Dragons for much of the 5th edition, appearing in many promotional videos and DMing acquisitions, incorporated actual play series. Yeah, that's significant.
Yeah. This is gonna be. I mean, we've seen a pretty big shift from D&D in terms of 5th edition to whatever the current one's called, 5.5, I guess we can call it. And I wouldn't say it's necessarily been a bad one. I mean, there's been a lot of great things about it. People love it. It might just be the changing of the guard. Things are changing, or maybe somebody knows something we don't. That there's something happening over there and things are shaking up.
Yeah. I mean, I saw comments like "rats leaving the ship," but I don't know that that's a fair comment to make.
Yeah, I mean, everybody loves to snipe at things all the time, right?
Right. Yeah.
You can't say anything online without a bunch of people just spouting the first thought that comes into their mind, and then the trouble is, they say the first thing that comes into their mind, and then it's sitting there on the internet forever.
Yeah,
it's kind of dumb the way we've set this internet up, isn't it?
Right. And and I think it all plays into the same reason that news stories lead. The whole man bites dog is more prevalent than dog bites man. Like, nobody cares about that. But of course, if it's more sensational, like I think you've said before,
it leads.
Yeah. So, this might not mean anything really. Maybe there's just a good opportunity out there, and they're both taking the same opportunity. I mean, that could be a thing too.
That could be a thing. So I don't know what Jeremy Crawford is going on to do next. He seems pretty young, like he's got a lot of career ahead of him still. So
sure. Yeah.
Hopefully something very cool. And we will, I guess, report when we find out, because we are sitting here from the outside. No idea.
Not even really looking in, just kind of looking in.
Yeah. Hey, look at that. I saw a headline.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
All right.
That's all we know about that.
Let's go on to the next story, something that has hit a friend of ours. So Charles Urbach is, I think, one of the best artists working in gaming today. His stuff has been seen all over the place. He works in traditional media. He is, I don't want to call him the last of a dying breed. There's a lot of people that are still doing that, but he's really carrying the kind of torch that, Jeff Easley and Parkinson and Elmore and people like that started out. He's just great. What you're seeing here on the screen right now is one of his, almost a doodle, for him.
Right.
Really. So what it was is sometimes he will do these custom magic cards where he'll do his art
one here,
on a card. Yep, that's the front of it there. Signed by Charles Urbach, and you can see the other side where he's done his dragon. And it's just one of those cool things that if you can't afford to own an original Urbach, because this is a great artist who spends a lot of time doing it. This is his work, his livelihood. So you're talking about thousands of dollars for an original. So this is something you could get.
Right.
So he has sent this out, and it has gone missing in the U.S. mail system. So it's pretty suspicious.
Yeah.
It was sold and shipped in February, disappeared in March during transit, and it was last tracked in the Boston, Massachusetts area. There was something delivered. The only thing that was delivered, though, was half of the padded mailer with the shipping label still attached and an apology note from the USPS. Everything else was cut away and missing. Not like, oops, it fell out, but like somebody went and cut it open and did that. So that really sounds like somebody at the Postal Service. That sounds like somebody who had access to the mail stole it.
Yeah, but that's so weird. Like you'd have to know, right?
I think somebody, maybe someone along the line was like, "Hey, this looks like it might be valuable." They know what magic cards are. It's obviously a hand painted piece,
Right.
So it is. The thing about it is, though, so Charles is saying that it's not just a card. It actually holds a lot of personal and professional value to him. It was his first piece of original magic art after 20 years in tabletop gaming.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know whether the art on the front of the card is his art and then he did another piece in the back. I'm sorry, I don't know the full details of this, but I know it's something that is meaningful to him and to the person who bought it. So I remember he was saying that probably somebody thought it was, a really super valuable thing. And unfortunately, he's not really in a place in the Magic Pantheon where you were going to get, $10,000 for this card or anything.
Right.
So hopefully whoever did steal it, if it was stolen, will realize that it's not, they won't throw it out. I hope they don't just like ditch it.
Oh, that'd be even worse. Yeah.
That'd be worse. So what Charles has asked is, if somehow in the gaming world, if you're at a convention someday and you see this for sale, don't buy it or attempt to recover it. Just let them know where you saw it. Don't go Batman on them. That would be one of the saddest vigilante stories ever. Right. So yeah, if by some chance anybody out there encounters this card, let Charles know. And he says, magical dragons have long memories and powerful karma, and artists even more so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so weird. Oh my God. I really hope the story of this comes out only because I want to know. Because there's so many times where something is really, really weird and you just can't understand it.
Yeah.
And then when you hear the story, you're like, oh, that kind of makes sense. Okay. You know what I mean?
Well, this can make a good podcast if anybody can make a long story out of it. Make one of those serial crime podcasts.
Right.
Follow somebody around a small Alabama town.
Right.
Get their bio. Yeah.
Little did we know the card was in his trunk the whole time.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
Okay.
What do we got next?
Well, this is this is a good one for you. This is Pivotal Magazines in RPG History. You magazine guy, I think, right?
Yeah, this is great. So this is an article that Shannon Appelkline did this week, or maybe last week, about 7 days ago. And he's written this as part of the company history for Dynasty Presentations, the last new history written for Designers and Dragons, The Lost Histories, Volume 2. So Shannon Appelkline is the author of Designers and Dragons, which I don't know, probably got a copy of it. So it was a single volume that got things mostly right. And the first I heard of it was when Ernie Gygax had picked up a copy and he was just complaining about factual errors, which in retrospect, I know now that personal memories are not always as reliable as actual receipts. But nonetheless, after that first run, which there weren't very many of them, I was very lucky to get a hold of a copy. Then Shannon went back and redid it as like a 4 or maybe even a 5-volume set. I forget. I have all the volumes, but it's incredible. It's right up there with John Peterson's Playing at the World in terms of its importance as a history of the gaming industry. I'd say it's Designers and Dragons is one of the best you can read.
Okay.
So he continues to write things like this, and I guess Designers and Dragons: The Lost Histories is more stuff that he found out. So he put together the top 10 RPG industry magazines, and let's go through them.
Okay. So I did these I got these in order, in the same order that he had them in.
All right. Now, before we go through them, I'm going to say there's one very important magazine missing from this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's for a reason, because it's not technically a magazine. But Shannon did mention it in the article. He did call out the fact that he deliberately decided it wasn't technically a magazine, so he didn't put it in, but he did give a shout out to it. So I'll mention it at the end.
Okay. All right. Very good.
So, should I be going from the top, from Space Gamer?
Yeah. Right. That's one down the line.
Yep. So Space Gamer, this is the I don't know I guess he's got it here as being the oldest. We could kind of debate that in terms of the Dragon and Space Gamer, but Space Gamer started in 1975 as a sci-fi fantasy board game magazine, and then shifted to RPGs after D&D. So this was a British magazine by Steve Jackson, the British Steve Jackson.
Okay.
And that's always and Aaron Alston. So Space Gamer, I've only got a few copies of it. It's a great example of magazine of the time. Totally agree.
I love this cover, man. It's like it's so like 1975. You know.
You know what though? I think this might be a cover letter for it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But even if this was the cover, we're going to see on a bunch of these how much better these looked than the garbage design that happened in the 1990s and early 2000s when everybody could do desktop publishing, and suddenly it was just a mess of filters and garbage instead of just somebody who took the time to just make something simple. But all right, so that's Space Gamer.
Right.
The next one then is the Dragon. So there it is, the very Dragon number 1. So this was, I think most people know the history here of the Dragon. And let's see, we got some people in the chat. I want to make sure I'm listening. Okay, we got Chet and David. Hi guys, and Brian, and there's everybody. Okay, so I think most people know that the history of the Dragon is that originally there was a newsletter, I'll call it, called the Strategic Review, that the TSR did, and I'm gonna actually call Shannon out on this, because I think he left out something actually very important. No, he didn't. Sorry, I'm not going to call him out, because he's calling this the top 10 RPG industry magazines. Okay,
right.
So really, gaming magazine history to me kind of begins with the General, Avalon Hill's The General, right? So Avalon Hill started the General basically because I'm bad with names. I've forgotten his name now. That was actually running Avalon Hill at the time, but he was basically doing it by himself, and he needed people to help. And he needed a way to advertise. So he started a newsletter, and he just asked everybody, if you see this, he put it in with, I think he might be put it in with the games, or I don't know what he did, but he said basically, if you see this and you'd like to be an editor, write to me. And people wrote from all around the country and just volunteered their time helping to make the General, including Game Science. Oh my gosh, the founder of Game Science. Can you help me here?
I can't. I don't know.
I feel terrible. If anybody in the chat can help me remember this quickly, hold on, it's a game. I'm just gonna look it up. Game Science founder. Let's get this right. Lou Zaki. Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah, I do know that name.
Yeah. So Lou Zaki was actually one of the first regional editors for Avalon Hill's The General. And I have a copy of it, and you can see him just out of the Air Force. So all that inspired other gaming magazines to start. And the Strategic Review definitely, I think, was inspired by The General. and then became the dragon when Tim Kask decided, hey, I think we can make this into something bigger and better. And so we all know the dragon. We know the history of it. Incredibly important. Died an ignoble death, if you ask me. Because it got sort of it went out with a whimper. It just became an online thing, and then it was only about D&D. But what was so great about it is originally, even though it was the TSR house organ, they were smart enough to give Tim Kask editorial control and to put a wall between themselves and the magazine so that people could take it seriously and trust its objectivity.
Right.
So it didn't just feel like a big advertisement for TSR. And that's the best thing they did. And Tim did a great job as the editor. And of course, later became the editor for our magazine, Gygax magazine, which was naturally a kind of callback to my favorite era, which was when like James Lowder was there and Roger E. Moore, and all of those folks. So anyways, Kim Mohan, I shouldn't leave out Kim Mohan is a great editor there.
Okay.
So moving on, we have White Dwarf. We're talking with Steve Jackson. Now this is a beautiful, look at that cover.
That's nice.
That's beautiful. And that was money saving, because in the kind of printing that they did at the time, you could save money if you just did a single spot color.
Yeah.
So you have necessity creating this striking all monochrome cover that I think just stands as one of the most beautiful gaming covers I've ever seen.
I've said this many times, but adversity does often create better art. When you have too much of a budget, it can actually hurt your art.
Yeah, creativity thrives within boundaries.
Yes.
And the artist who actually did the cover, I can't see Chris Beaumont, I believe. I'm sorry if I'm getting it wrong, but I mean, so I'll describe the art for anybody who doesn't know it and is listening on audio. You have, it looks like some dwarves on top of a wall of a castle fighting against, I don't know what kind of creatures those are.
Look like pterodons or pterodactyls.
Yeah, they're almost
they're
like
not, but
ghostly pterodactyls or something. And there's a wizard who appears to have had his head pulled off. Literally decapitated.
Yes.
Actually, I think one of the dwarves is doing it.
Yeah, I think so. So it looks to me like those creatures are something that the wizard was summoning up, and they chopped his head off to try and stop him. Maybe.
I think you've got it. Yeah. And there's something very Dave Trampier about this.
Yes.
It doesn't look like his work, but I feel the emotion in it. And that's the thing. This is why I love a cover like this so much more than something somebody sits down and says, well, I'm a digital artist, and so I use lots of filters and I did some photo bashing and I filled it with a gradient, but did you put any emotion into it? The amount of time it took this artist to sit down and do this, you see their hand in this. And the cover doesn't try to do anything more than what it can do. It's well balanced. It's evocative. It doesn't require a lot of showing off. It's just great art, and I love it.
David says they look like Vrox.
I don't know what a Vrock is.
Neither do I.
No, I have no idea what a V-Rock is, but maybe, yeah, Vrocks. Chet also thinks they were meant to be Vrock. So if anybody in the chat wants to tell us what a Vrock is.
And what's interesting is that one it says to present. So of all these ones that we're talking about, it's the only one that's still going.
Yeah, that's true. Right. That's true. And Games Workshop, to their credit, has done a really good job continuing to support it. And where others wouldn't. So love that.
All right.
We now have different worlds. And this one was Chaosiums. So everybody was getting into the game, having their house organ. David Benavides says that Vrocks are demonic vulture creatures.
That's what they look like.
Yeah, they do look like that. I saw a video of a vulture the other day. It was a hang glider or paraglider, and a vulture landed on his glider as he was flying. And I take it back. Vultures are beautiful.
I like vultures.
When you see them in flight, they're majestic. Yeah. Anyway,
Oh, they're cool.
sorry. Okay, so Different Worlds, great name, so evocative. It kind of it makes me think of the Walden Books had a newsletter they did called Signals, Xignals,
Okay.
and it's kind of evocative of that to me. But yeah, Different Worlds, amazing magazine, very much focused on the kind of things that Chaosium would do, but they had well, a lot more diversity of the kind of columns and the things that went into it. And unfortunately, it went away in 1987. But it was great. All right, we get then on into White Wolf.
This is old looking, man. This is jeez.
So that's interesting. That cover that we're looking at right now, it's a black and white ink drawing of a wolf and just the words White Wolf up above it. But that's 1986.
Yeah, it's not that old. Like, well, I mean, actually 1986 is a while back, but you know.
No, it's like at least 10 years ago. So but you can see, you can see the shadows of the staples on the side. It was clearly a zine. It was a handmade zine. And again, I would rather see a handmade zine where somebody just pasted it up and said, that's what I've got, than something where a person just gets over their skis,
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just a fanzine when it was founded. Became the most important magazine in the industry, according to Shannon. I don't know if I would agree with that.
It's a little far, right?
But it definitely is incredibly important. But eventually it began to focus more on the publisher's own games. And then in 1995, it became White Wolf Infobia, focused more widely on pop culture. And that didn't really work. It lasted about a year and then it went away.
Yeah.
All right. So then we have Challenge, which I can't talk too much about. I do not know Challenge. This is GDW's magazine. And we're going to talk about GDW in the final story today.
Is GDW, are they the ones that did they do Traveler? Because this looks like Traveler.
Yeah, Traveler, Twilight 2000, and then the last story that we're going to be talking about today, which was the other one. I don't have the thing in front of me. The last story that we're going to talk about with Dark Conspiracy. So they did Dark Conspiracy and Traveler and Twilight 2000. So let me get back to the stuff we had here. So yeah, I've never read Challenge. I didn't subscribe to it because I wasn't playing GDW games at the time. But it did actually evolve to become a magazine for the entire sci-fi and horror side of the industry, which is something the others didn't cover as well. So that's really good there. He doesn't mention Ares in this list, which was the science fiction one. I'm just going to, I will defer to Shannon that he has a better perspective on the industry than I do. I would have included Ares.
Right.
But just because there's really science fiction isn't as represented in this list.
And wasn't Ares wasn't it SPI's sort of magazine? Didn't SPI have a big influence on Ares?
SPI did. Didn't they do strategy and tactics?
I can't remember. I could have swore there was a lot of universe stuff in Ares, but I could be wrong.
It might be because eventually TSR took over Ares because they absorbed SPI. And Ares eventually ended up being a section in Dragon Magazine.
Right. Okay.
And that was kind of, that inspired us when we did Gygax Magazine, because we printed Kobold Quarterly inside of Gygax Magazine because Kobold Quarterly had folded. And it didn't fold. I mean, obviously, Kobold Press is doing better than ever. They're amazing.
Yeah, they're doing great.
Just they had decided it really wasn't where they wanted to spend their time. And I knew a lot of people still missed it. And so we printed Kobold Quarterly articles the same way that Dragon did Ares articles.
Okay.
So, all right. So moving on
next
from there, now we get to one that I will absolutely agree is incredibly important. And I guess we're kind of going in reverse order here because this is number 7.
We are. You know what? We are going in reverse order. That's the order they were on the page. Sorry.
I think he's doing them maybe in chronological order because I definitely don't think any of these are in order of importance. This is chronological.
Oh, could be. Yeah. Because it's kind of hard to say what's more important than another.
Yeah. So Shaddis, this is Jolly Blackburn's zine, and this is where Knights at the Dinner Table first appeared and where it came out of. Shaddis continued on after Jolly left to do Knights at the Dinner Table exclusively, but if you can get a hold of actual copies of Shaddis, I think maybe you can still buy them digitally as PDFs, but if you can get an actual physical Shaddis #1, I mean, you're talking about money like you would spend on a Dragon #1.
Really?
A load of money, because it's an incredibly important zine. Because I think, to me, what Shaddis was an example of real fan-created magazine, as opposed to most of the ones we've talked about so far have come from the companies. And this one was fans and doing a great job. And what they did great was they weren't afraid to just put the magazine out, even if it wasn't, maybe the slickest thing in the world. They said, just get it out there. And they just kept going and going.
So you weren't the editor?
No, the opposite of me. The opposite of me.
Like, this doesn't look good enough.
Yeah, no, and this is why I think Jolly is so great, because he just produces. He works and works and works. So yeah, it was RPG focused. They got into collectible card games, and it's most notable outside of the importance of Shaddis itself as being, like I said, the birthplace of Knights at the Dinner Table. So very, very important magazine.
Oh, and that became AEG. All right. Next.
Yeah. And I believe, did Shaddis? Okay, it did shut down. Okay, I really didn't know. Okay, now we get to Pyramid. I do not know this magazine at all.
Yeah, I think I've seen it in the store, but that's about it.
So this is the other Steve Jackson now. Now we're getting to Steve Jackson, who does Illuminatus and Munchkin and all those games. So it's Pyramid because they do all the Illuminati games. So it's the eye in the pyramid. And it says here that this was a house organ from start to end. It only lasted 5 years. But it says that its news of the wider industry in the 90s was unparalleled. So that's great. And it's a beautiful logo. You can tell, if we're looking at the cover now, you can start to see that Desktop Publishing creeping in. You know, all the different fonts on the cover, and just a little bit too much going on, right? Cool art though.
Hey, Jason, so you worked in working in magazines and everything like that. I always thought that putting these not the UPC, but the barcodes on the front of the magazine.
It's ISSN.
The ISSN, putting that on the front of the magazine. Is there a reason for that? Because I think it looks ugly.
Well, you have to have it. Brian's asking which Steve Jackson did Car Wars. It's this Steve Jackson. This is Steve Car Wars Steve Jackson. So yeah, you have to put it somewhere that you can scan it, because
but you could put it on the back, right?
But there's an ad on the back.
Okay.
Your advertiser doesn't want the barcode sitting on top of their ad.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, that makes sense.
You could put it on the back, or you could put it on the bag if you want to if you want to polybag them. So that actually happened a lot in those kind of magazines that would include a CD or some sort of goodie, right?
Right.
But you have to have something there because it has to be scanned by the distributor. It has to be scanned by the store. All that kind of stuff. Yeah.
I was gonna say it just takes away from the.
So much. I don't think it does.
No,
because to me, all right. So I started in zines. Just literally, we would go down to Kinko's and just Xerox all night and make like 100 copies of our handmade Xerox zine. And we started with Industrial Nation magazine, and then we started doing Permission magazine, but they were zines. And so by the time we got up to the point of being a real magazine where we had, going on a press and going to distributors, and we finally got to put that barcode on the front, to me, that meant we arrived.
Okay.
That's like a sign of
we're somebody.
Yeah, you're real now. You have right. So I mean, that's just part of the trade dress to me.
Okay. All right.
I like it.
Fair enough.
Yeah. But yeah,
let's go to the next
beautiful
one.
art, beautiful logo, not such great layout, but that's how it is. Okay, then Arcane. Oh God, this
looks
ugly.
awful.
Yeah, this is exactly what happens when you let everybody just have a computer. Take it away from them. All right.
I was gonna say, this does not look good. I don't like this at all.
It's okay. So this, I don't know why he's calling this one of the most important, but maybe this is from the era that I wasn't gaming. So I was, but not, focusing on the world. So it ran for 2 years, 1995 to 1997. Not published by an RPG company, but by a magazine company, Future Publishing. And
shows.
Yeah. So it says, some have called the results a glossy overview, but offering an overview is exactly what makes an industry magazine great. Okay. It says, Arcane closed out the 90s with a look at the RPG world in its darkest hours. But, I mean, let's look at this thing. So you've got a logo that is ridiculous. Like, why? Why is this? There's this sort of, it's like it's a little gold lowercase serifed word that's been cut into pieces for no apparent reason. Maybe it's supposed to be like rocks or something. You've got fantasy, sci-fi, horror written up at the top, just floating there, doing nothing. There's anybody who's a designer will understand when I say there's no grid, because when you design something, you start with a grid so that you can lay everything on it so that everything has a relationship to each other. It's got some sort of, you don't see the grid, but you can tell by the way stuff is there. These are just words thrown anywhere. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I count 8 fonts right off the bat.
Yeah, that's terrible design.
Yeah, and you some sort of like, it's not Comic Sans, but it's pretty damn close in the middle of it. It's just, you can barely even see the art. I can't even tell you if the art's good or not because I can't see it.
Yeah, so, it looks like a manipulated photograph that's been
probably.
I don't know.
Probably. Yeah. But this is what I'm saying. I would rather see somebody just grab a Xerox machine and some scissors and do a collage and just do their best with that. It looks so much better. So anyway, I'm being design picky. Let's get to number 10.
Yep.
And then I can talk about what I think is missing from here. So number 10, Games Unplugged. I'm sorry, that's bad art. That is bad. The design isn't as bad, but that is horrible art. This looks like somebody traced over a photo. I'm not an artist.
It also looks like a computer game magazine.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably why it says Unplugged. Probably why it says Unplugged. Chet is on there, and he can tell me if I'm being an idiot, and it's actually great art. But I think it looks like somebody just painted over a photo. We do have one person that digs the image, so that's good. Anyways, so this says, by the 21st century, magazines were on their way out. Hey. And so Games Unplugged looked like it might be the last gasp of the industry magazine, published first by Dynasty Presentations and then Fast Forward Entertainment. Pushed hard on the angle of news, interviews, designer notes, and company histories. So I'm assuming there's probably some really good content in here because he's calling it one of the 10 best or most important. That's top 10. He's calling one of the top 10. So this is one I would love to read some of the articles and just see what it's about. So before I mention what he left out on purpose, I think there's a couple others that should have been mentioned in here. Imagine magazine, and especially Tim Kask did do another magazine called Adventure Gaming, which wasn't that long-lived, but was really good. Really, really good magazine. And there's one other that I think should have been in here but wasn't, and I will remember it later. But so the big thing that is missing from this is the first game zine. It was called Alarms and Excursions, started in
I've heard of that.
1974, and it's what's called an APA zine. So Amateur Press Association, APA. And the way they work is, instead of being a magazine where you've got an editor and they put everything together and then they distribute it, what you do is you have a distribution of maybe, let's say, 100 people. And no, actually, that's not even that many. Let's say 30 people. Right. Each one of those people writes an article for the zine and prints out 30 copies of it and then mails them into the central editor. And that editor takes all of the different ones that everybody's printed 30 of their own copies on their own paper and mailed it in. They collate it, they staple it, and they send it back out to those 30 people.
Oh, wow. Okay. That is
So
content created. Or I mean,
yeah. So
created content or whatever. Yeah.
it's like a web forum, but
Yeah.
before there was a web, you had to print it. And eventually they got to the point where they were actually making more than just, if 30 people were making it, they would actually say, hey, we have 200 people that are subscribing, so make 200 Xeroxes and send them in.
Mm-hmm.
Not a money-making thing or whatever. And the amazing thing about Alarms and Excursions is it still exists to this day. It is the oldest gaming or RPG magazine, and it is the longest running because it's been running for, I think 1972, probably 74. I think it started with Dungeons and Dragons, so 52 years that it's been going.
Is it still physical?
Yes.
Or is it electronic? Yeah,
It's
really?
exactly the same. It always has been. So Lee Gold started it. She and her husband started the zine. She still does it to this day. I went down to visit her a few years back with John Peterson just to because she basically, I had asked her, do you have any of the really old copies from the 70s? And she's like, they're all in the garage, but I'm too short to reach them. If you want to come help me clean the garage, you can have them. So we went down and we just, got piles and piles of the old ones. So I have a complete set going back to number 1, which is probably worth money, but I'm not giving it up.
Right.
But it's not technically a magazine because, as I said, it's an apazine. So that's, I think, why he deliberately left that out. But I mean, what's amazing about it is that you can go back and read an Alarms and Excursions from like 1975 or 76 and see all these people arguing back and forth with each other about Dungeons and Dragons and other games, and why Gary's an idiot and why this person's a genius and why that person's a dummy. And it was actually that apazine was the thing that caused Gary to write some fairly angry editorials in Dragon about people who should just shut up.
That's funny.
And if you've seen floating around, there's one particular article from Alarms and Excursion that pops up on the internet every so often, because at some point in Dragon magazine, Len Lakofka and a couple other people did an article that suggested women should have lower stats than men.
Oh,
It came up with all these things for it. And so there was a really impassioned piece written in there about how misogynistic that was and how it was BS. And an artist drew like an effigy of Tim Kask and Gary Gygax and Len Lakofka and everybody else being hung. And it shows up every now and then just to kind of let people know that, there's always been arguments.
Sure.
So it's important for lots of reasons, but that's one of the good reasons.
All right, I got about 6 minutes left. Let's do the last one.
All right, let's wrap it up with this last story. I'll go ahead and do it since I've been reading up on this one.
Okay.
All right, so we talked before about GDW, and one of the games there was Dark Conspiracy. That was part of the triad. So you had Traveler, Twilight 2000, and Dark Conspiracy. Mongoose Publishing, which has already acquired Twilight 2000 and 2300 AD back in October, and in August last year they acquired Traveler. Now they have picked up the other one. They have now acquired the rights to Dark Conspiracy by Lester W. Smith. So this was originally published in 1991 by Game Designers Workshop, and it's a dark horror game set in the near future. It's basically, if you've got Traveler, which is sci-fi, and Twilight 2000, which is military RPG, this is the horror version that kind of goes with those.
Sure. Never played this one. I've seen it so many times, never played it.
Yeah, same here. I don't have any of them. Now I need to go back and find the originals. It used a system that was based on Twilight 2000. So this was Lester W. Smith's first game that he made. Mm-hmm. He originally was asked by Mark Miller to just do it totally from scratch. And then as he realized how hard that was, they ended up moving it to based on a Twilight 2000 system. So if you played Twilight 2000, you could jump over this pretty easily. It's had a long, long history. It kind of jumped around because what happened was after Lester created this using Twilight 2000 as its base, he managed the Dark Conspiracy line at GDW. He managed Dark Conspiracy and Twilight 2300 AD. But Unfortunately for him, he did it as a work for hire, which means he didn't own the rights.
Right.
And so when he left to go work for TSR, GDW ended up selling the IP to an outside investor, and it went through some different versions. And from what I've read, people didn't necessarily like the versions after that.
Right.
And so when the property became available, he had been trying to acquire it. And a lot of people had been saying to him over the years, we would love it if you could get this back and do something new with it. And so unfortunately, he posted on his blog the other day. I'll just read what he said. He said, I did my best, folks. I made an offer and I had it approved, negotiated for some final wording about the state of the previous licenses, and then learned last week that the IP was being sold to someone else.
Oh,
So they just like pulled the rug right out from under him.
that sucks.
He was very, very magnanimous about it. He said, given the property's history over the past few years, I truly wish the new owners the best of luck in bringing back to life. Fans of DC deserve it. So he's going to go on and do his own D13 system.
Okay.
This, we will see what happens. I did some looking around to see what people seem to think in some of the subreddits and forums. And it seems like people are pretty positive about this. You know, they feel that Mongoose has been doing a good job with the other titles, and they've kind of got all three of them back together again. So could be good things. I would look forward to seeing what happens with Dark Conspiracy. I think it could be a pretty cool game.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Well, that's the news for this week.
Yep. You've got to get going. You've got stuff to do.
Yeah. And I have a daughter to pick up. Sorry, folks.
So we'll just tell everybody to we'll see if we can start getting something together so we can maybe hang out in the Discord after this with Patreons and things like that. We'll try to get that set up before next week.
Yeah. And, all right. Yeah. You know what? I'll put a little urgency flag on figuring that out, because we've been talking about it. I just haven't got it.
I think what we can probably do, if everybody's okay with it, is we could just say we'll set up a private channel over on Discord, and we can do a video, just a video chat, and everybody who's in the Discord or in the Patreon can come in and just, you can just have a hangout.
Yeah. Talk about whatever you want.
Yeah. All right. So if you're listening on audio, please leave us a review on iTunes. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. And we will see you next week.
See y'all.